Welcome to the DNA Show.
DNA? Dude, are we doing a science show?
No, D is for Dennis.
Oh, A is for Andy.
And N is for and?
Oh, man, nerds.
Oh, yeah.
We're nerds, dude.
Yeah. Well, good. Then we can talk about comics and movies and pop culture and sports.
Sports and nerds. Yeah, we're going to make that work.
All right, let's roll.
Heidi ho, welcome back to the Dennis and Andy Show. I'm Andy.
And I'm Dennis. Welcome back.
What a packed week we have, Dennis. We've got fantasy football to talk about. We're doing a new thing, which is what comics did Andy and Dennis buy that week? Because new comics come out every week, and every week we hit the shop and buy what we like. So we're going to tell you what we bought. We're going to review X of Swords #1 that came out last week for Marvel. It's an X-Men huge thing that ties into 22 different comics. Whoa. And last, but certainly not least, Dennis, I found a movie called #Alive, a Korean zombie movie.
Right. And when he said, I just watched a Korean zombie movie, I naturally assumed it was Train to Busan, because most everybody's seen that movie.
Except this guy until 3 days ago when I watched it.
Which we'll have to talk about on a different podcast.
Or we'll just roll it into this one. It depends. You know, if we got the time, we'll roll them in together. Because I did watch, because I've never heard of Train to Busan. So I looked it up. I'm like, how is this 5 years old? And I've never heard of it. So
I watched
it.
All right. Fantasy football.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun, dun. Yeah.
Dun, dun.
Yeah. I lost again.
Man, you were 0-3.
I did.
In fantasy football.
Yep. And my tight end that I picked up got injured in the first quarter, never got it passed, so it doesn't matter which tight end I start. And I've got 0 points for the entire season. So needless to say, I dropped him and I re-picked up Gronkowski because at least if I'm going to get 0 points, I would rather have from a guy I would root for.
You know what's sad though? So I won. So now my record. So your record is 0-3-0 and I'm 1-1-1.
Yep.
Because I've got a loss and a tie. So I won my first week, won it handedly. But what cracks me up is looking at our rankings. So my total points so far this year are 334. Dude, yours are only 327. You're not that far behind me. Yet out of all 10, you're in 9th place and I'm in 6th.
Because I've lost by 1 point. And look, I had
You only lost by 1 point this week?
Last week. This week,
right.
I lost by, well, I still lost. I had 2 guys playing Monday night, so I was kind of hopeful.
One.
You know, I had hope. I did.
You had a little glimmer.
And it was supposed to come down darn near to a tie. So I had 2 dudes playing. I wound up losing 124 to 116. I just needed my 2 players to hit their average. And once again, as long as they hit their average, I was fine. I would have won barely. No, one guy did okay, and the other one just bombed it and decided, from Baltimore, just not going to show up. So, I lost.
I do take glee in the fact that your wife is not #1 anymore in the league, and she's dropped to #2. I take a little bit of glee in that. You can tell her I said that.
Oh, I'll make her listen to this part of the segment just so. And she didn't know she dropped out of first, not because of a loss, but because Chad wound up rolling in 187 points in a week. I don't know if we've ever had that. That might be close to a record.
God.
And he played my sister. I think it was my sister-in-law. And she had a good week, but nobody's going to compete with 187 points. That's just ridiculous. So, he's like 30 points ahead of Susie now in the standings. And, it is what it is. But I have always said, I'll take a loss on my fantasy team if it means that the Green Bay Packers, don't they keep winning. Dude. So I've got Lazard, and I would have won if I would have started Lazard, but he's a Packer, and I know Adams was out, so I kicked around if I started him, and I decided not to at the last minute, and that also made the difference. But I'm almost thinking, if I start a Packer, they may lose. So now I would rather lose and have my Packers win.
Dude, I gotta say, and so far it's working because in fantasy you're 0-3. In real football, the Packers are 3-0.
Right.
And I was rooting for the Packers on Sunday night because my daughter loves the Bucs, and I did not want a Saints win because that could have put them in first place. Now the Saints are in second place. The Bucs are in first place. The Bucs are 2-1. The Saints, I believe, are 1-2. That makes me happy. What did my Cowboys do over the weekend? They took a shit as usual, but they were playing Seattle. So I try to do this with my daughter, but she's young. She hasn't experienced football as much as I have. But I try to tell her, if you go into a game that you know could be close or a loss, expect a loss. Because then if they do lose, you don't get upset. Like, I did not get upset. I wasn't upset during any of the game. I wasn't upset when the game was over. I was actually more upset that they were mounting a freaking comeback because I did not have faith in them actually getting across the finish line and winning. And I was like, oh, I'd almost rather have you lose by a few touchdowns than mount a freaking comeback and be right there when time runs out. And that's what happened.
See, we call that a Kyle game. One of my friends, he wants every game that the Packers play or any team to come down. It's their tie game, and it's anybody's with 3 seconds down. He loves heart attack games. I don't. I'd rather have my team just come in and kick the crap
Same
out of
here.
you and go home.
I like coasters.
Nope, he doesn't. But I was actually rooting for the Cowboys this week because I am not a Seattle fan.
No.
I was like, oh, look at that. Look at that. Come on, Cowboys. And he's so close.
They didn't even have the 12th man in Seattle. There was no fans. So they didn't have to deal with fan noise. I mean, I think they pump stuff in, but it's never as loud as the real thing. And I was just like, oh. So this week, who do they play? The Browns. Oh my God. The Browns are 2-1. 2-1. Usually I root for the Browns because they're such an underdog. I want to see them do well. Not this week. This week, if the Cowboys don't and I believe the game's in Dallas, if the Cowboys don't freaking blow out the Browns, this should not be a tight game. This should be a Cowboys win by at least 2 touchdowns. I can't even mentally go into this game using my own advice of just think they're going to lose, then you'll be fine. I can't mentally do that because it's the Browns.
Yep.
I can't do it. And I love the progressive commercials with Baker Mayfield and this is the stadium's his home. I love that crap. But I can't do it. Who the Packers got this weekend?
So we play Atlanta.
Where?
At home. But again, that home and away right now just doesn't mean what it normally means, having no or very few fans in the stands.
But once again, I'm rooting for the Packers. And I'm not a big Packers fan, but Atlanta hasn't gone 0-3 in I think like 2 decades. Because I think it's been 2 decades since they went 0-2. Now they're 0-3, and I don't have a mad hate on for Atlanta, but now I just want to see them go 0-4.
Well, here's the thing with Atlanta. They're a good team. They've had huge leads, and then last week they lost to the Bears. I was like, oh, that's huge. I mean, Chicago usually can't do it.
They benched Trubisky.
They did.
And Foles is the starter from here on out, they announced.
Oh, I hadn't seen they announced that officially, but I kind of
starter now.
He came in and threw 3 touchdowns in the 4th quarter. Yep.
I mean, how bad? I didn't watch any of the Chicago game, but I mean, how bad was when I saw it come across the bottom of the screen, watch another game that they benched Trubisky and put Foles in, I was like, man, how bad was he doing? And that's it. Foles came in and threw 3 touchdowns.
Yep. And,
holy crap.
Yep. And they came back and beat Atlanta. So Atlanta had huge leads the last 2 weeks and just blew them right in. So, I don't know what's going on, but now we're playing a team that's backed into a corner who's had that happen. I always hate that because that's just a bad recipe for the Packers. However, again, I would much rather not have a Kyle game and actually come into this and let the Packers win by 30 points, and I would be much happier.
Well, and I think, I agree. And, with Dallas, the other thing that I use to soothe my soul with them being 1-2 is they played the Rams. Good football team.
Yeah.
It was close. Then they played, oh my God, now I'm blanking. On the second game, they won by the 1 point. I'm blanking and I'm too lazy to look it up. But anyhow, it was another game where I was like, okay, it's not a gimme of a game. And they won it by 1 point. So good. But then this past week, they play Seattle. And I'm like, well, it's Seattle. Seattle's another good team. So like I said, I expect at the end of this weekend for them to be 2-2. That's what I expect.
Yep.
And I also expect, with the Chicago news of Nick Foles being the starter, that if Foles actually finishes the season and they have a winning record, I believe Trubisky will be on another team next year.
Yeah.
Because why pay him to be a backup?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was always one of our questions going into the season with Chicago, so it'll be interesting to see.
Wow. Good times. Good times. So, on to the new segment. What did you buy? It's New Comic Week. New Comic Week. So, like the geeks we are, we're just going to run down what we bought this week. Dennis, you go first.
Me? Well,
let's see what overlap Dennis and Andy have, because we actually go at different times. We don't go to the shop together in two different shops. So let's see if there's any overlap.
Well, of course, they came out with the tribute, Giant Size X-Men #1. So it was the tribute to Weening Cockrum, and it looked really good. So, I own the original, but, just had to.
All right, so that's an overlap. I bought that. If you don't know what this book is, I was very, very excited for this book because what they did was it's the 45th anniversary of when Giant Size X-Men #1 came out. It came out in August 1975. So they had a different artist draw one page of the story going by the original layout in the book that, Dave Cockrum did. So and it has a table of contents, so you know who did what. So it kicks off with Alex Ross doing the splash page, which is gorgeous.
Looks great.
And then it's Kevin Nolan, and I'm not going to list them all, but it's a 36-page story by 36 different artists. So it's really a cool, unique idea. The main cover is by looking at the main cover is by Adi Granoff, who is actually a very good artist. He did the Iron Man Extremis storyline from years back. He actually helped design the first Iron Man armor in the Iron Man movie. And then the variant cover is by Trad Moore, and that's where Dennis and I differed. He picked up the normal cover, and I picked up the variant cover. But both covers are also just each artist's take on the original Giant Size X-Men cover with the new X-Men bursting through the page and the old X-Men in the background. So it's not a new story by any means because all the dialogue and everything's the same. It's just every page is drawn by a different artist. I've been looking forward to this since the spring when they announced it. So that is an overlap for the two of us.
Yeah, and that's one I really want to take time to read because of all the different artwork on each page. To me, that's just exciting.
What else you get?
Well, so I picked up book #2, which is X Factor #4, because it's the X of Swords. So we're going to talk about the first chapter today, and then this is the second chapter, which we'll probably touch on next week.
Overlap #2.
It is part 2 of 22.
Oh God, we'll talk about that once we get to it.
Yep. I picked up Avengers 36 because, it's still dealing with Moon Knight, the Age of Khonshu, and it's been a pretty interesting story. So, yep, going to keep rolling with that.
Dennis has a hard one for Moon Knight. Because you only got Avengers because of Moon Knight, right?
Yeah, that was a title that was kind of on my I may cut this list, and
Moon Knight shows
Moon Knight, so I read it just to see if it was any good, and it was. So I'm like, all right, yeah, gonna.
Who's your perfect casting for Moon Knight?
Oh, had not thought about
Is it
this.
Keanu Reeves, as they keep throwing around in the fan verse?
Well, if there were no monies or anything attached, and we could literally pick anybody, of course it would be Keanu Reeves.
He'd have to cut his hair, though. He definitely would have to have shorter hair.
Oh yeah,
Moon Knight can't be running around looking like John Wick.
yes,
So,
yeah.
but
no,
yeah,
I would love Keanu.
I can't think of somebody else casting wise. I think I just have Keanu in my head because of the fan verse going around.
Yep. Batman 3 Jokers Book 2 came out. And after the first one, we reviewed it a few weeks ago. And so looking forward to reading this. I had to pick up 2 copies. I've got one for me and then one of my buddies, Chad. He's up there. And I want to pick it up. So I'm just going to ship them to him because he didn't have them at where he was.
So that's another overlap.
Yep.
And what cover did you get, Dennis, for yourself?
I got the. I got her.
I got Batgirl too.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I picked Chad up the Joker cover because I like both of them. But I got last time I got all 3 of the Joker covers.
Right.
So I was like, I think I'm going to go with the Batgirl.
Yeah, but that's the weird thing. Last time you got basically the variants. You're not sticking with that for all 3 of them. Like you're not going to get the variant for each one.
Well, 20 didn't want to. He wasn't going to order all 3 for all of them unless
okay.
I if we really wanted them. But it was a lot in there, and I was like, the idea the first time is cool, so
Sure.
I spent the extra money. But this time, Now, if there was a really cool one, and actually both of these are really good covers. Every cover they put out has been really good in this book. I'm not going to fork out that kind of money a book just to get all these covers every time. But the first issue, I thought it was it's dealing with the 3 Jokers. They were great picks of the 3, so why not?
Cool. Next.
Wonder Woman 84, and for those of you who don't know, it's called Museum Mayhem, and it is the movie tie-in for the Wonder Woman 84 movie.
That is another overlap. Look at us. We are overlapping it. I bought it because, it's a movie tie-in, and I still love movie tie-ins, but Brett Blevins, Louise Simonson wrote it, and I'm a fan of her work. Walt Simonson's wife. She's a creator. She was an editor at Marvel, wrote X Factor, wrote New Mutants, written a ton of stuff. So she wrote it. And then one of my favorite artists who doesn't do much in comics anymore, Brett Blevins, drew it. So I had to get it for that. So I got that too. Overlap number 3.
Wow. Usually we don't have a lot of overlap.
I know.
This is one of those weeks.
It's weird because I usually buy good stuff and Dennis buys crap. So there's never overlap.
Yep, and I buy great stuff, and Andy's like, whatever. So, and my last one this week was, and it was an accident. I just happened to be walking by the wall, and I saw Transformers, The Terminator. And I was like, what? I have no idea what this is. And so I'm like, it intrigues me. I must pull it down and look at it. And I started looking at it. I'm like, wow, this actually looks really, really intriguing. So, of course, and I looked and I'm like, that's issue number 4.
Oh.
And I was like, so it's my fault for not looking and seeing if anything really interesting was coming from, and this was from IDW. And then Tony goes, hey, you know what? I suppose you're going to ask. Yep. Are 1, 2, 3 available? He goes, yeah, 1's already on the second print, but 2 and 3. I'm like, yep, get it. So I'm going to get it because I have to read it because it just looks interesting.
Well, you can't read this one. You're not going to read this one until you get the other ones, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because I was going to say it's number 4 of how many? Is it 4 of 4?
4. That's the end. That's the
really?
final one. Yeah.
Did you flip to the last page?
I did.
You dummy.
I couldn't help it. I was looking through it before I realized what it was, and then I was like, because then it says the end ? Oh, it's one of those. So yeah, looking forward to it. So
that's a really cool premise.
I know.
I might have to check that out.
I know. And that's it for me. What else did you get?
Other than that, we overlapped, and the only other book I got that you didn't was the Batman Superman annual number 1. They restarted Batman Superman last year with a new creative team and everything, and this is the first annual. And once again, I like the art on it and the writer, and it's a one-off story, and I like it when Batman and Superman team up. So I got that as well. So that is That is what is new that the boys got this week.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to see because it's usually a blind test for us. Is what did you get this week? What did you get this week?
And
let's just talk about it.
I got a nice eBay purchase too coming tomorrow.
What did you get, Andy?
I got a slabbed, so that's where it's encased in plastic and officially graded, copy of X-Men number 5 and the very first number 5 from when the book launched in 1963, and it's a grade 6.0. So it's, it's a little higher than mid-grade, but the reason I got it is because I like picking up books for my daughter that are issue number 5s, and then the month below has to be May because she was born on May 5th. And I just happened to be looking at some older reprint stuff, and I saw that X-Men number 5 from 1963's covered month May, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how much that would set me back. So I was looking on eBay. I consulted with Dennis to make sure that was what I paid was a good price.
Well, he's like, do you have any duplicates of number 5?
First I asked him if he had any duplicates because I'm like, hey, if he has duplicates, he can make some money. So I'm always looking out because that was the reason if you had them, you want to sell. Because honestly, if you had a dupe and it was like a 2.0, I probably would have bought it if you were selling it. But Dennis did not have any duplicates.
I only own one. As of right now, I only own one of them.
Yep. So I searched eBay and found one. And actually, I found a 5.0 that was priced right around the same amount as the 6.0, except the 5.0 was for a buy now, so the price was fixed. And the 6.0 was actually up, for bidding. So the 6.0 ended up costing me about $35 more, but for a grade higher, I thought, what the heck? And, this is one of those books.
It's a great comic.
It's one of those books that will go up in value. Like, 25 years from now, this Batman Superman annual that I just bought today, you don't know what could happen, but it might only be worth cover price. Or maybe $2 more. Or it could be one of those books that 25 years from now is in a dollar box. Whereas this X-Men that's CGC graded at a 6.0, 25 years from now will be worth more than what it is now. So if you're into comics I'm into it for reading and collecting I'm not looking to retire off my collection by any means, but if I can find a book that I know is worth money and I can get a good deal on it, I will. Or if I have a book that I bought when it originally came out that is worth money, I'll keep it. Actually, Dennis, funny story. I was in a comic shop today and I noticed that they had an issue of Punisher, number 1 from the limited series.
Yep.
So originally Punisher had its first limited series. It was a 1 through 6, drawn by my buddy Mike Zeck, inked by John Beatty. It came out in the 80s. It was the first ever time Punisher started a book solo. I had 1 through 6. Notice I said I had, because about 20 years ago, I picked up the trade paperback, and I was like, I don't need these 6 issues anymore. I got the trade paperback, so I dumped them, because they weren't really worth much. And now number 1, in real nice mint condition, is about $100.
So I've been teasing Andy because he does this a lot. He gets rid of his floppies for trades, and that's fine to read, but kind of want to keep both. You just never know.
You just never know. And I've done that with multiple books. So now I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. No, I was actually going to say that X-Men number 5, I that's a great issue. I mean, I love all those original X-Men issues and stuff, but that one is actually, Stan Lee. I mean, it was the Stan Lee story. Jack Kirby and Paul Reinman
was the anchor.
Yep. Yeah, but it was there were no first appearances, but it was, the second time the Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and basically
third Magneto.
Right, it was the third Magneto and stuff like that. But it's basically the Brotherhood of New Mutants, and it's just a great book. So I think you picked up a really good book, Andy.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
It doesn't hold up. I'm just going to throw it out there. It doesn't hold up to that Slab Bionic Woman number 1 you got. I know that slabbed Charlton Comics Bionic Woman number 1 that you picked up.
Yeah,
is now a keepsake.
It is for me, so he's right, and I know he's teasing me a little bit, but I also had to go pick up. I got issue 1 and 4 from that original run. I'm a huge Bionic Woman and $6 Million Man fan, so I do like those comics. Lindsay Wagner, loved it as a kid.
Sure.
She was just amazing. You never see her at like conventions, and I mean it's been like literally forever since I've seen her. And somebody had a slabbed one, and it was signed by Lindsay, and it was certified, and I was like, you know what, I know I'm probably never going to get to see her, and I'm just going to bite the bullet. And I did. I was very excited. I love it. When you
told me, like, at first I was like, Bionic Woman #1, slab, who cares? But then when you said it was signed by Lindsay Wagner, I'm like, all right, that's cool. That just upped the cool factor, so.
It is. For me,
That's
again,
cool.
It's one of these childhood things. And, like, if I could get a $6 Million Man signed by Lee Majors,
Have you looked?
I have not found one yet, and I do check at all the conventions and stuff, and it would be hard to find, but who knows? We will.
He's in his 80s.
We'll find out.
I believe Lee Major's in his 80s now, so
yeah,
have to get on that bandwagon.
Well, that's just it. I've got signatures from a lot of guys like that, and I do go to conventions and try and meet some of them, and a lot of Star Trek guys. I met Buck Rogers and Wilma Deering and stuff like that, and got pictures and stuff with them. But yeah, this is just one of those from my childhood that just kind of near and dear to my heart.
No, that's
so
cool.
It was a good week.
Sweet. All right, it is that time to talk about X-Men, X of Swords, Creation #1.
Part 1 of 22.
Oh, that just hurts that hurts my wallet. It hurts my head.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one's a one shot, and from what I understand, the whole 22 issues is going to be bookended with a one shot on each end, and then it goes through all the X books and stuff throughout. So this first one that came out last week is oversized. It's like 78 pages. It's like, it was $7. But $7 for 78 pages, that's definitely worth it. Pepe Larraz drew it. You're getting fantastic artwork. Jason Hickman wrote it.
Jonathan Hickman.
Jonathan Hickman wrote it.
And I love Jonathan Hickman, and we've been kind of mentioning this in a couple of the other past, since he's been doing other, with the X titles. His writing is just spot on, and it looks just, everything is, we're kind of excited. So Jonathan Hickman writing it, it looks good. It's a big book. Kind of excited. Except for the 22 parts, I am very excited to see what they're going to do with this.
Well, I was also Jonathan Hickman and Tina Howard are the writers. There's a co-writer. I got to admit, I bought it because I'm a #1 phobe. I like getting #1s. I love Pepe's artwork, so that was another plus. I love Jonathan Hickman's writing on X-Men. That's the only X book I get currently is X-Men, so I get that. So I bought this, and it's 22 parts. If it's bookended, it's $7 a piece. That's 14. So let's do the math. That means there's 20 issues at basically $5 a piece.
Well, most of them are 6. I think the one shots are $6.99.
Right, $7.
And then the other ones are $5.99.
Right. So you're looking at over $100 for the whole thing.
Yep.
I went into it going, I kind of hope it sucks, because then I'm like saving money. But then I read it and I was like, damn it, that didn't suck. That was good. Son of a bee.
Yep. And I kind of had a feeling it was going to, again, Jonathan Hickman. Let's see where he's going to take this. And he's a world builder. And he's so good at building it. And like when he started this new X-Men series, we talked about in one of the other episodes where there's a whole white page of like actual just writing. And he builds up like with the Sentinels it was, remember? And he doesn't like that. He launched just, artwork right up the front and stick through it. But there's so much going on, you can't tell everything through story in order to build these pieces for an understanding of the world that he's putting together. This is no exception. and the story is it's just good. It's dealing with they've got Summoner who winds up they wind up going through. Well, just rephrase. X-Men 12. It actually kind of ends, and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. That technically leads into this one shot.
Yeah.
So you almost have to read X-Men 12 to get the full story of it. And for those of us that collect X-Men, it's not a big deal. We already got it. And it did. It rolled into it. Summoner, because we're dealing with Krakoa, the island that they're living in.
Yeah.
And then they've got Arco, which is like the other island, which is like the twin or the other half of the island. So it's a really interesting story, and I was like, I wonder what they're going to wind up doing with it. It deals a lot. So Captain Britain is kind of a big deal in this because this story deals around Otherworld, and the diplomatic zone of Underworld, and it's the Starlight Citadel. So those that are Captain Britain fans know the story behind that. And at one time, there was the Captain Britain because all the different worlds, each of the different Captain Britons and stuff like that were in charge of protecting, each of the different ones. But needless to say, it's really cool. So the head of it right now, her name is Saturine. So there's some interesting stuff that's going on. The X-Men, Apocalypse winds up building a portal to go to this basically like other island. Lots of cool things wind up happening. But they come back wounded. They're like, oh my God, Banshee's going to die. So it's Banshee and the untouchable Eunice.
Yeah, Eunice the Untouchable, which this is why I like what Hickman does. He pulls these characters out that you haven't heard of in forever. Because Eunice the Untouchable goes way back to the Jack Kirby X-Men stuff, too.
It does. Matter of fact, I think it's like 8, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. But, like X-Men 8. And even back then, he was and he was pretty much like a one-shot, basically.
Yeah. And then Banshee. Like, Banshee, since the John Byrne days, and since the new X-Men days, has always been one of my favorites because of his costume design.
Until he died.
Right, until he died. And then they depower him, all this crap, and I'm like, oh my God, seriously? But now he's back. He's in his costume. He's awesome. But then Hickman also pulls Saturine, a character that originally was created in the early 80s in the Captain Marvel series that came out in Britain. So last week when this came out, one of Marvel's True Believer books came out, which is a reprint that reprinted the first appearances of Saturine from that British Marvel magazine she was in. And those things are only $1.
Yeah,
so,
I wish I would have picked it up. I wish I would have picked it up last week.
I'll sell you mine, $10.
Yep.
It's gone up a little bit.
I'll get right on that.
Okay. So I like how Hickman pulls these characters just from out of oblivion.
Right. And makes them relevant.
Right.
It's kind of like going back to like Spider-Woman, when she hadn't been seen forever. And then Bendis just suddenly made her relevant again in the Marvel Universe. Hickman does the same thing. So, the untouchable Eunice, he's been taking capture. His ability is he creates force field.
Right.
And nobody can touch him, and he basically has this force field. The only way you're going to basically knock him out is through mind control. You gotta knock him out that way. And it's really interesting, and you're like, well, it's him and Banshee, and then going with Summoner. So I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Bad things happen. No, we're not going to spoil anything.
Because I was going to say the ending is really good. And, well, like I said, I was hoping it wouldn't be so I could save some money, but the ending was so good. And I will say, when I don't know about you, Dennis, but when I was getting to the last couple pages, because there's basically a battle and stuff, and you get to these last few pages, and I kind of saw what was coming.
Yep.
With the twist in the end.
Yep.
And I don't think it, I think, you read through the 78 pages, you're getting to the end. Hickman's doing a good job of building up. And I think he meant for you to realize what was coming. So when you actually turn the page and see it, you really are slapped in the face with like, damn, I was right.
Yep. At least you're right. I mean,
conspiracy.
It's awesome. One of the things that I really enjoyed was she winds up doing a tarot card reading.
Saturnine does.
And as she flips over the card, they basically have a 80% fill page of what the card looks like that she did. It's like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And it looks like a tarot card with awesome artwork in each of them. Because this story really is about Apocalypse and his horsemen, which we won't give away too much on that. But it looks absolutely incredible. And they've got different characters that come up. So each of these cards, it is just an incredible piece of art. I almost hope they do like a print of these just for the artwork. I would do them as posters. I mean, they just look absolutely incredible.
They're very nice. Who would ever think that you'd root for Apocalypse?
I know. I'm telling you, with
in
Apocalypse...
a million years, who would think when Apocalypse was created and all the shit he's done in the Marvel Universe that one day you'd be going, come on, Apocalypse! What the hell?
Yeah. Well, and then, so here's where the thing with Hickman comes. So you see the tarot card and stuff like that. It looks incredible. She flips it over. She tells you what it is. And then you go through and you're like, this is cool. Then you get to the next page. They list the tarot cards. And he goes into detail on all the stuff Andy doesn't like to read.
I read it, though.
You have to, because it's important stuff.
It is.
And he fills in information. Anyway, as you're going through, the story is great, and it winds up being a really, we'll call it a twist, but most of us kind of figured it out. But it was great. I mean, it was a great ender, and it's another one of these that I sat there and went, okay, do I need all 22 episodes? The interesting thing, so what it's going to do is it's going to cover through X Factor, Wolverine, X-Force, the Marauders, Hellions, New Mutants, Cable, Excalibur. Guess what? I get them all anyway, so yes, obviously. At least I'm not having to go out of my way. Now, for guys like Andy who don't pick up all the X titles, this is where the decision's going to wind up coming in. And I almost wish, as we've talked about with like Empire, you just got to take a break on these big ones just from a pocketbook standpoint.
The thing with Empire, though, was, like we talked about, it was a 6-issue miniseries, and yes, it tied into other books, but I only read the 6-issue miniseries, and I don't feel like I was left out not knowing key things. Because I think all the major beats were covered in the miniseries, and while it did cross over into other titles, it was just ancillary stuff that I'm sure fleshes out the story more. But I got everything I feel I needed from the 6 issues. Now, maybe if it comes out into a big, super fat hardcover, I'll buy that, because that's what I did last year with House of X and Powers of X. I bought the first issues, and that was it. And then I was like, you know what? This is a lot of stuff. I'm going to wait for a nice big collection. It'll look nice on my bookshelf, and I can just read it in one sitting. And that's what I did. I have a feeling that I might be doing that with X of Swords, because originally, like, Part 2 came out this week in X Factor number 4. So I thought, okay, well, Part 3 next week, and it'll just basically be 22 weeks. Oh, no. After next week, the following week, Part 3, 4, and 5 come out in 1 week. And then the week after that, 6, 7, 8. And then the week after that, they go down to 2.
So 9 and 10.
9 and 10. Then the week after that, it looks like they go down to 1, 11. And I'm like, man, you're making me pick and choose at that point. But like Dennis said, since he gets all the X books, it's not more on his pocketbook, but because I don't, it is more on mine, and that's where I might just default and go, all right, I might bow out until the hardcover. We'll have to see. I got to read Part 2. I haven't read Part 2 yet, so I got to read Part 2 tonight. If it's pulling me in, I also don't like to wait, and I'm also the type, I literally get 2 monthly books. I get Savage Dragon every month, and I get Green Lantern every month. So every week when I go to the shop, I always pick stuff up. Like I got the Batman Annual, I got the Wonder Woman 84 this week, so you never know. If next week's a light week, I might just get them. So we'll have to see.
And it all depends on the story, and we'll talk about Part 2 next week and see, does it continue? Because this has been great, so hopefully it continues.
And then next week also, we will talk about Batman 3 Jokers #2.
Yeah, because we'll have read that by then, so we'll have a couple of reviews next week. So
It could be story time.
it could be.
We could let us know if you want. Dennis and I will read a whole comic and on our podcast doing different voices for all the characters.
It would have to be a special podcast. So finally, we're going to talk about Alive. So and it's hashtag Alive.
And it's on Netflix.
If I want to upset my daughter Elizabeth, I just say #Alive.
Yes, and it is on Netflix.
It is. It's on Netflix because she hates that. She goes, everything's hashtag. I'm like, hey, when we grew up, that was a #.
What if you call it tic-tac-toe sign Alive?
She would stop talking to me.
Next time I see her, I'm going to play totally stupid, which isn't hard. And I'm going to go, Elizabeth, I know you're totally into Korean stuff. You're going to be moving there or whatever. You've got to see this movie called Tic-Tac-Toe Alive. It is. I don't know why it's called that. I think there's a scene where they're playing tic-tac-toe because they're so bored. Maybe that's it, but it is awesome.
I'll film it. I'll film it just to get the reaction.
Yeah.
So yeah, this wound up being quite interesting. So again, I had seen Train to Busan, so I was like, well, at least I've got something to compare it to because he said it's unlike any of the other, zombie movies.
Yeah. It was, I'm scrolling through Netflix. This pops up in you should watch this. So I'm like, well, let me look at the trailer. And I look at the trailer. It's already got points because it's dubbed, and it's actually dubbed well. Because, full disclosure, I hate reading movies. I like watching them and not having to read text. So it was dubbed. I still had the dub. I still had the closed captioning on.
Yep.
Because, what the heck? I didn't know how good the dubbing would be just from the trailer. It seemed good.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. And there were actually a couple times where the dubbing would drop like an F-bomb or something, but the closed captioning was clean. I thought that was kind of funny. I was attracted to it because I like it. There's basically, for the first half of the movie, there's just one, besides the zombies, there's just one other actor in the movie who's not a zombie, and it's a teenager the whole premise is the teenager wakes up in the morning, his mom and dad are off at work, his sister's gone.
He was supposed to buy groceries.
They left him a to-do list. He wakes up late, plays some video games, and he hears some stuff. He lives on like the 6th or 7th floor of an apartment building in Korea, and he hears some commotion, so he goes and looks out the balcony. And there's just people running out of buildings and getting in cars, and then, you see a person dive on another person, and from the distance, you're like, what the heck's he doing? And obviously the person's eating the person. And so, you know where it's going.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is my wife watched it with us, and Elizabeth, you forgive my Korean here, but the actor is Ian Yu, and as soon as it came on, she goes, oh, I know him, because my wife and daughter both watch K-dramas and a lot of different Korean stuff, and yes, my daughter will be moving over to Korea, and she speaks it and everything like that. And I'm like, of course you're going to know this. Even my wife.
That was the fun part for me is, like I've said before, as a kid watching movies, you don't know any of the actors when you're a teenager, a young teenager, and you're watching these movies. So you're like, oh my God, Tom Cruise is Risky Business. I don't know who Tom Cruise is. This is the first time I've seen him. I believe this role. And now I see Tom Cruise and everything, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's Tom Cruise. But I don't know these Korean actors.
Yep.
And the production value, I think this is probably the first Korean movie I've seen. The production value was awesome. The makeup effects, the zombies I thought were really cool just from how they portrayed them makeup-wise, because it wasn't... This movie takes place over the course of like 30, 40 days, so it's not like Walking Dead where we're years into it, so you've got all stages of zombie. You got the freshly killed and the thing that's been dead for years.
Right. It's not like World War Z or a lot of the American types. I mean, their zombies are different. It's fast acting, and when they turn, they go through this really interesting body contortions, and they're fast. I mean, these aren't slow-moving zombies. These are fast, attacking, running. They're semi-intelligent because they can find things smarter than, again, even like Zombieland and stuff like that. No double taps in this.
Oh, no.
You know, but it's the Koreans. So now that I see the style of this, it ties in very close to Trains of Busan. Same type of zombies. And I was like, oh, so maybe this could be a stylization that culture has done for zombies. And I almost hope it is because it's interesting.
Well, it's creepy when they change. It's not just, Walking Dead is somebody dies, you give it a few minutes, and then you just hear and they wake up and they come after you. This, somebody dies and their body contorts, so you almost think that the actors that they cast for the few zombies that you actually see transition, part of getting the job might have been, can you contort your body? Because some of the contortions these dudes go through when they become zombies, and then when they add the sound effects on top of it, it's just so creepy. And even the makeup effects, because once again, Walking Dead zombie, if Dennis dies in The Walking Dead and becomes a zombie, I have no way to tell really except his eyes and the sound that comes out of him. Other than that, he looks just like he looked when he died. But these, their skin automatically changes color and the veins and
blood coming out of the eyes.
It's just really, it was so well done. And then like I said, it had to be at least halfway through the movie, they finally introduce
a second character.
A second actor, a second character.
And it winds up being, of course, a super attractive girl. Her name is Shin-Hye Park. And, of course, my wife's like, I know her, too.
Did she really?
Of course. I told you. She knows them all. She even, she was from this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, and then she's got this and she does this. And I'm like, okay, TMI, don't need to know that. But she told me anyway. And I'm like, she's adorable. So they're in this apartment complex that it's either a U shape or they're across from each other. So they're two identical, and I couldn't quite tell from the different camera angles. But they're literally at the same apartment across from each other at the same height. He's, he was going to kill himself and hang himself because he's stuck up there. He's got no food because he didn't do his grocery shopping. He was just completely stranded, and all of a sudden, a laser pointer comes in and saves his life because it starts pointing to words on the wall that were in, different posters and stuff, and don't kill it. And, of course, he doesn't die, goes over, and, of course, sees that there's a girl, very beautiful girl across. So they're like the only survivor. Everybody else at the bottom is all dead. So what are they going to do? They have to be very creative, and he's out of food, and she winds up sending him food over, and it's pretty ingenious. And he's got one of those drones, like Andy and I talked about in one of our podcasts. Yeah,
he's got a drone,
and they attach a line that goes over and do it, and it's pretty ingenious. And
they do a great job of raising the stakes because you're like, well, okay. I mean, first you're like, well, how did they get out of this? Because you know that somehow there's got to be some resolution. But they're both stuck in two separate buildings, like Dennis said, a good football field apart from each other. And, they're both on like the 6th, 7th floor, something like that. And they can't leave, But there's got to be some resolution. And they do a really good job of raising the stakes with... zombies in hallways and him trying to venture out. And then, of course, they do finally meet up together. And I'm not going to spoil it for you because it is so brand new. But, all in all, if you like zombie movies that aren't the typical American zombie stuff you're used to with Walking Dead and stuff, I would check it out. It's a tight hour and a half.
I would too. I was just going to say the subtitles, if you like Korean subtitles, things like that, just stick with the subtitles if you want. But the dubbing, it is already English dubbed. It's solid enough where you don't have to. It drove my wife nuts because she likes reading. She likes doing that. So, but the dubbing was good, so it is definitely a worth a watch. It was fun. There were a few twists in it, and it's a good resolution. It ends well. It's a low budget movie. Yeah. I mean, don't expect
I don't know, though,
World War Z type of things. But
well, that's true. But at the same time,
it's incredibly well done with what they did.
I can't say it's low, but because I don't know what low budget is in Korea. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I haven't seen.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is, I've seen American-made low-budget movies, and you're like, wow, that's shoestring. You can tell.
Yeah.
But I haven't. This was my first Korean movie, so I don't know what ultra high budget looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it wasn't super high budget because there wasn't space stuff and huge special effects. I did some research on this movie, and there was some, they filmed, obviously, there was some blue screen stuff, because obviously when they're high up and the dude decides he needs to get a better look and hang out of his balcony, literally, where if he slips, he falls and goes splat. That was blue screen. So there are special effects and, a lot of zombies and stuff. I don't think, like in Walking Dead, there was hordes of zombies CGI'd in, because I don't remember any shots where there were hordes that were like over 20 or 30. So I think a lot of those effects were practical. Blue screen stuff isn't that expensive. I don't know. My whole point is I don't know what low budget Korean movie looks like. To me, this could have been a theatrical release over here, and I don't know, American wise, I'd say this has got to be, taking the fact that the actors aren't, if this was an American-made movie with 2 B-level actors, so not A-list, what, 30 million?
Yeah, probably something like that. That's kind of what I'm kind of comparing it to from an American standpoint. And now, again, from the Korean side, these are known actors, so I don't really know. I do know that they worked well together. Yeah.
What's Korean money? It's not yen. Do you know?
No, I was going to say.
I don't know what it's called.
No, I feel bad. My daughter's going to yell at me.
Do they get paid with like chickens and pigs? I mean, it's like, hey, dude, you're going to start our movie.
No, I was going to say renminbi, but that's not right. And I've actually got some at home. No, I was just trying to compare it to like USB movies. Like I was going to say, it's not like it's Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie from like the early mid '90s. Kind of bad, but it's.
Do you think in American money that each one of these actors, whatever they got paid, was even $1 million?
I don't know, because the K-pop stars are big, and their K-drama stars are big. They're kind of a big deal over.
What are these two from? Like, what did your wife recognize them from?
Dude, you're asking me to start naming off K-dramas?
No. Are they from TV shows she's seen in Korea?
K-dramas. Yes.
So Korean TV shows.
Yes.
Okay, so that was my question. She hasn't seen them like, oh my God, they were in this Korean movie or this Korean blockbuster. She's seen them from Korean TV shows.
Right, which is the bulk of what a lot of their stuff is. Oh. I mean, there's some very interesting Korean movies, and I can't think of the name of the one off the top of my head, but it deals with, like, from the 1300s with the wooden turtle ships, and it was all about the 13 versus the Japanese fleet. And they've got some really good movies. Anyway, I would recommend it on the comic book scale. #alive, I would say, or sorry, Elizabeth, # alive, I would say.
Tic-tac-toe alive.
I would probably give it an 8.0. It was entertaining all the way through. I enjoyed it. I liked the actors. I liked what they did. I was never really bored. It was solid. I like Train from Busan better, which we'll probably talk about sometime in the near future. But this was a very solid zombie movie.
Yeah, I'd probably go 7.8, 7.9. I thought it was really solid. Like you said, I believe the actors. Once again, I love seeing people I don't know because I can really believe it. I thought the cinematography was really well done. Special effects were great. I thought the story was compelling. It is an edge of your seat type. It didn't, it starts off and it just starts moving. it was fun. I like zombie movies. It was, like I said, tight hour and a half, so it didn't drag out. I didn't think the ending, once they lead you down a path, and I wasn't surprised at the ending. I think they kind of went for surprise factor. I wasn't surprised by what happened.
Well, it was kind of like a choose your own adventure. You know, you can either choose this or this, and only one or two things are probably going to happen at the end.
Right.
So it depends. Are we getting a happy ending or a sad ending? And we'll let you watch it to find out which one it is.
And we won't tell you. Train to Busan, I watched it for the first time over the weekend. I don't know. I'll go with Train to Busan being better because it had a more emotional tug at the heartstring ending, which really, I was just like...
This has a little girl involved, and she's not only adorable...
Oh, she's
You
so adorable.
feel for her throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
We should probably do a review in the future on this one. I'd have to go back and rewatch it just because it was so good, but yeah, that would definitely... Cool. Let's just do that.
All right, we'll definitely review Train to Busan. Dennis will have to go back and rewatch it. And until next time, you can find us on Facebook, Dennis and Andy Show, YouTube, Dennis and Andy Show, iTunes, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, all your favorite stuff. We're there. Thank you for listening. Please share and subscribe.
Yep, or you can always ask your Amazon device for the Dennis and Andy Show, and it'll pull up the latest episode.
Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Until next week, grab your 3D glasses.
Get your favorite comic books, roll them up, and put them in your back pocket the way you should treat comics.
Throw your pigskin up on the mantle. This is Dennis.
This is Andy. Later, friends.